Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join today's webinar, Your ISO 19443 Success, What Every Supplier Should Know. A recorded version of the webinar will be available to you after the broadcast has finished. This will include a recording of the Q&A at the end as well. We'd love to hear from you, so please submit your questions at any time during the webinar. You can find the Q&A panel on your screen, and your questions will not be seen by any other attendees. We'll do our best to answer as many as we can, but if we do run out of time, we will follow up on any unanswered questions via email. I'm Katharina Linzner here at TÜV SÜD. I'm a marketing business partner, and in my role, I am responsible for all TÜV SÜD's marketing activities related to the nuclear energy sector. Today, we will be discussing ISO 19443. As you all know, in the nuclear industry, quality, safety, and reliability are non-negotiable. ISO 19443 is a new quality management standard tailored specifically for the nuclear supply chain, and it represents a critical milestone for suppliers who wish to remain competitive, compliant, and trusted by licensees. Our presenter today is Luciana Ray, a project manager at TÜV SÜD. Luciana is a result-driven industrial engineer with dual master's degree in industrial and energy engineering. She has expertise in nuclear and renewable energy, safety, quality assurance, and technical project management. With international experience in Argentina, France, and Germany, she leads interdisciplinary teams in regulated environments, combining strategic vision with operational excellence. Fluent in German, English, French, and Spanish, she brings strong cultural adaptability. Luciana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Katharina, for the introduction, and I welcome everybody to this webinar regarding the ISO 19443 norm. So I will be guiding you through the content and would like to start the presentation with a glance of some data related to TÜV SÜD, to mention that TÜV SÜD employs currently around 15,900 technical experts, and on a global level 30,000 employees. We count with 160 years of experience in the areas of safety, security, and sustainability, and are presented over 1,000 locations worldwide. With a revenue of 3.4 billion, TÜV SÜD services are considered and respected as being independent and impartial. And specifically in one of our core businesses, the business line nuclear power and decommissioning, we present multidisciplinary experience and world-class expertise in the domain. Specifically regarding the ISO 19443 subject, I will be presenting you the standard as well as the benefits to suppliers, some of the crucial requirements of the ISO 19443 norm, how the implementation of the ISO 19443 can be fulfilled at your company, and I will also give you a quick overview of the audit and certification process. After the presentation, we can then go over to the Q&A, and we will be happy, as Katharina mentioned, to receive all of your questions. So let's start with the standard and the benefits to suppliers. In this sense, I would like to recall that ISO 19443 is a quality management standard for the nuclear supply chain, meaning the specific requirements for the application of ISO 9001 by organizations in the supply chain of the nuclear energy sector who are supplying products and services important to nuclear safety, meaning IT&S product and services. That will be one of our key concepts, which I will be presenting. So you have to imagine ISO 19443 is based on the ISO 9001 norm and is complemented by specific aspects related to the nuclear industry, such as the notion of graded approach, the determination of IT&S items and activities, meaning items and activities important to nuclear safety, the provision for CFSI, counterfeit, fraudulent, and suspect items, the control of external providers with some specific requirements for the nuclear industry, as well as the concept of nuclear safety culture. And the aim of ISO 19443 is to improve the understanding of quality requirements for nuclear needs throughout the supply chain, integrating the operator or licensee on one side and the suppliers on the other side, to standardize the nuclear safety requirements and to harmonize the quality and safety culture internationally, so that everybody is on the same page, to name it like that. It facilitates also the acceptance by regulatory bodies for those companies who might have gone through the certification cycle of ISO 19443, and it also assures a long-term sustainable relationship between the licensee and the suppliers. In order to make this a little bit more specifically or a little bit more clear, here you will see the nuclear supply chain. At the top, we have the licensee who holds actually the authorization granted by the nuclear regulatory body. And on the other tiers of the supply chain, you will see the contractors, suppliers, and sub-suppliers who would be working on the supply chain. So here it's important to recognize that the licensee will cascade the nuclear requirements throughout the supply chain and needs to assure that the nuclear specific requirements are actually respected at each level of the supply chain. And ISO 19443 can give us the possibility for the licensee, but also for the contractor and subsequent suppliers and sub-suppliers to assure that nuclear requirements are taken into account. And also for companies working at an international level, for nuclear power plants who need to comply with different regulations in different countries. So the norm provides us and gives us the possibility to have a common understanding of these nuclear requirements. Whether it is on a vertical level from licensee to sub-supplier, but also on a horizontal level when, for example, contractors, suppliers or sub-suppliers are working together on a specific item or activity to be introduced in the nuclear context. So, now to sum up a little bit this benefits to suppliers for you to recognize why ISO 19443 could be of an advantage for you in your industry, in your company. So it allows to gain access to international markets and international recognition. I also mentioned this common understanding at an international level. It also allows for some companies and suppliers to fulfill tender requirements, for example, for new build project, increasing therefore the acceptance in the framework of these tenders. It can make more effective and it can allow more effective and time-efficient customer audits, because requirements have been introduced, standardized nuclear requirements have been introduced, which makes customer audits more clear and easier to approach. It also gives, as I mentioned, a common understanding and acceptance between the licensee or operator and the supply chain to improve the effectiveness of the functioning of the supply chain. It can also create a higher acceptance by safety authorities and regulatory bodies, and it definitely improves the safety culture, the quality, and also customer satisfaction through the introduction of nuclear-specific requirements. Now I would go over to the next topic, which are the crucial requirements of ISO 19443, meaning some specific concepts which have been introduced additionally to the ISO 9001 requirements into the norm, and which are specific oriented to the nuclear market. So I would like to start with the definition of nuclear safety. As you might know, nuclear safety is the achievement of proper operating conditions, the prevention of accidents, and the mitigation of accident consequences, which results in the protection of the workers, the public, and the environment from undue radiation risk. So that's the principal objective when operating a power plant. There are two major factors who contribute to nuclear safety. One is, of course, the technological factors related specifically with the equipment we can find in nuclear facilities. And the second one is the concept of nuclear safety culture, which is influenced on one hand through the behavior of the individuals working in this context, but also through the profile of the organization itself. So the optimal interaction between those two components, individuals on one hand, and the structure of the organization on the other hand, ensures nuclear safety in the organization. And that's one of the key concepts ISO 19443 makes emphasis on. So for you as suppliers, you might ask yourself, but how am I responsible to, or what is my role in this related to this notion of nuclear safety culture? And it's important to be aware that any supplier who is involved in the supply of IT&S product and services, meaning product and services which are important to nuclear safety, is a key partner in ensuring that an appropriate level of nuclear safety is achieved. Meaning through our management and through the behavior of individuals, trying to enforce a questioning attitude, the adherence to procedures, also the transparency in reporting issues and events. Those are elements and fields in which, through which the suppliers can assure that nuclear safety is considered in the framework of the organization through the management, as well as to the behavior of the individuals working in this context. Now over to a second concept, which is pointed out in the norm as well. I already mentioned it, but to dive a little bit deeper in it is the notion of IT&S, items and activities. IT&S, as I mentioned, stands for important to nuclear safety. And all product or services whose failure could result in undue radiation exposure of people or the environment are considered IT&S products and services. This means that all product and service having an impact on one of on the three safety functions, or on one of the three safety functions, meaning control of reactivity, cooling of the fuel, or confinement of radioactive material, will be considered as IT&S product and services. The determination of a product or service being IT&S or not is done by the licensee or the tier 1 contractor. So it's the customer ordering a specific product or service who clarifies if that specific product or service is going to be IT&S or not. And that depends how this item or activity will be deployed in the framework of the nuclear installation. So we differentiate between items and activities, and then the analysis according to the function this item or activities accomplish or fulfills, we determine if the item or activity is IT&S or not. And according to this classification, we need, of course, to respect certain requirements. For IT&S items, we will have, also given by the safety classification of the item, and in the technical specifications, there will be certain requirements which I will need to apply and to accomplish, and which are not required for non-IT&S items. And in this sense, the notion of graded approach is very important, which means to adapt my level of exigence or requirements to the importance of the item or activity related to nuclear safety. Here I will give you a quick overview related also to what has been mentioned before. to which can be the stumbling blocks or the most common audit deviations we can find when performing our audits. This, of course, depends on how deep or how involved the company is related to nuclear activities. So for companies who have always performed in the nuclear field, the audit deviation or the stumbling blocks will be less than for companies who are introducing themselves in this sector. But we have noticed in the framework of our audits that, for example, the introduction of the nuclear safety culture concept for companies who have never performed in the nuclear sector can be a difficulty, because it's a new attitude and notion to be implemented in the manufacturing and delivering of product and services. Also, the fact that every information throughout the supply chain has to be documented can be challenging for companies who are not used to proceed in this way, but who will need to proceed in this way if they want to perform in the nuclear industry. And also, one of the chapters of the norm specifies which are the information for external providers to be given to the supplier, for example, from sub-supplier to supplier. And this also can be a subject, meaning gathering all this information and receiving it from a supplier or a sub-supplier can be a challenge in order to prove certain aspects required by the norm. So yeah, this is just a quick overview, which might be the difficulties encountered by companies when audits, certification audits are performed, but it doesn't mean that you will necessarily find yourself confronted to these difficulties. That depends on each organization, of course. Now, as a third point of the presentation, I would like to give some aspect to present to you some aspects related to the implementation of ISO 19443 and how this implementation process might look like. And therefore, I think it is important to mention that the application of ISO 19443 of the norm means to integrate the requirements of the norm into the existing management system of the company. And here I would like to mention that, as you might know, the quality management system describes the processes and procedures to achieve consistent quality in design, manufacturing, and delivering of services and products by delivering reliability, including also the organization, effective communication, experience, and culture of the employees. So implementing ISO 19443 into your management system, into the management system of your company, will showcase that you have a sound process in place to match the high safety requirements of the nuclear industry with consistent quality over long periods. So that's the possibility that the introduction of ISO 19443 in your management system offers you. And related to the services that TÜV SÜD offers in the framework of ISO 19443, I will name 3. So we have the possibility to organize trainings related to the ISO 19443 subject in order to give your company employees an overview of the crucial requirement areas of the norm, and in order for you to have an introduction, or for everybody at your company or the group selected by you to have an introduction to the norm through this training. We also offer 2 days training and 3 days training, which can be performed online as well as on site. And the three days training, for example, with a third and additional day, can also be used by you to officially qualify your internal auditors. A second service we offer is a pre-audit or gap analysis. So that's an audit instance which can be performed, which is optional and which you can choose to be performed before it actually goes into the audit and certification cycle. And this pre-audit gives you the possibility to gain a first overview of your quality management system compared to the requirements issued through ISO 19443, and also to deliver to you an analysis of the state of readiness to meet the requirements of the norm, for you to evaluate what is missing in order to accomplish the requirements specified by the norm, and in which time frame it will be necessary to work on the points which are missing or on the gaps before a certification cycle is actually launched. Of course, as a third product, we offer the certification cycle, which is comparable to the cycle of ISO 9001. It's a 3-year cycle, which is initiated by, as I said, a certification audit, followed in year 1, followed by 2 surveillance audits in year 2 and 3, with the possibility, of course, to renew the certification from the 4th year. We also have the possibility to combine ISO 9001 and ISO 19443, because as I mentioned, when the audit for the auditing process for ISO 19443 is done, as this norm is based on ISO 9001, we are covering, when auditing ISO 19443, we're covering all the subject of 9001 as well. This means that we can extend, after a successful certification audit, on one hand, the ISO 19443 certificates, but on the same time also the certificates for ISO 9001. And why we can support you as TÜV SÜD to provide you with these services, training, pre-audit, and the certification cycle, is because we consider ourselves one of the leading service providers in certification with over 60 years of experience in the nuclear field. We provide exceptional quality implementing this industrial standards, and we are a trusted partner of safety authorities, operators, and vendors. From our daily business and the experience we have gained in the field, we know best both the requirements of the licensee, but also the challenges of manufacturers of nuclear components, equipments, and services throughout the supply chain. So we consider to have the overview of the supply chain, and also what is required from the regulatory body from that point of view. We're also one of the first companies to be accredited for ISO 19443 in 2022. And since then, we have certified companies all around the world. And with this global presence and international experience, our expert and auditor team can support you in many countries worldwide. So as a fourth and last point of the presentation, I would like to give you an overview of the audit and certification process. Just to make a short recap, I mentioned the pre-audit beforehand, and also explained that this instant is an optional one. You're not obliged to go for a pre-audit before launching a certification cycle, but it's a service which can be recommended, or which is especially recommended for companies which have worked so far only partially in the nuclear field, or which have no experience whatsoever in the nuclear field. So as I mentioned, a preliminary audit prepares your company in the best possible manner for the certification audit. It allows you and your employees to familiarize yourselves with the audit process, as well as with the auditors or with the auditor. You receive, in the framework of a pre-audit, a clear picture of the maturity of your QM system with regard to ISO 19443. And it also allows for weaknesses to be uncovered, to be detected, and also to be able to work on them in the framework of a corrective action plan. You will find out through a pre-audit if your company is on the right course for the certification, it helps you to focus also on the essential aspects to take into account in the framework of the norm, and therefore it saves time and money, because you're, instead of concentrating on details which might not be too relevant to the norm, you have a clear picture of what you need to focus on to be leaded successfully through the certification cycle. And you also will see and detect if your schedule up to the certification audit is realistic, due to potential gaps which you might need to work on before starting this certification cycle. So here an overview of the steps of the certification process. Some of the elements have been mentioned by me beforehand. So in the first year, as I mentioned, pre-audit, which is optional, it can be performed. And then we enter into the initial certification audit in this first year. The initial certification audit includes, of course, the preparation of the auditors, stage 1 and stage 2 audits, the reporting, the elaboration of the reports, the follow-up, as well as the certificate preparation. This first initial certification audit distinguish, as you see, between stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1 is an instance which takes around 0.5 to 1 day, and is performed in order to check the quality management documentation and to see if major deviations can be found at this stage. It's usually done online, but doesn't have to be online. And stage 2 is the second part of the initial certification audit, which is performed on site and where all the processes of the company are audited. Then in the second year, we go over to the surveillance audit 1. Exactly scheme is repeated in the third year with surveillance audit 2. These audits are shorter than the initial certification audit and also include the preparation of the auditors, the audit itself on site, the reporting, and the follow-up. In the fourth year, you have the possibility to enter a recertification cycle, and which also lasts 3 years and is also composed by the 3 elements: initial certification audit in the fourth year, surveillance audit 1 in the year after, and then surveillance audit 2. I briefly mentioned beforehand the audit duration when explaining or when presenting the certification audit and stage 1 and stage 2. So it's important to know that the audit duration for an ISO 19443 initial certification audit, but as well as for the annual surveillance audits, are given by the norm. And this audit duration is determined by the number of employees, which you can see in the first column. In the first column of this table, so the number of employees determines how long the initial certification audit and the annual surveillance audits will be at your company. Some additional aspects which might be interesting to know is if the entire organization is involved in nuclear specific activities, it's the entire organization who will be certified according to ISO 19443. If those nuclear activities are only part of the broader organization and only part of your activities, there's also the chance to certify only this part of your organization according to 19443. And in this case, a clear separation between the activities nuclear part and non-nuclear part is necessary to be done at the organizational level. And also for organization with multiple sites, a multi-site sampling is possible for the annual surveillance audits under certain conditions, meaning that if you count with multiple sites, let's take, for example, 3 sites, not all headquarters is audited every year, but the other sites can go through a sampling, meaning that not all the sites will be audited each year in the framework of those annual surveillance audits. So that gives you the chance to reduce the audit dates and therefore the price for the certification, because less audit days will be taken into account in year 2 and 3. And now, in order to close the presentation, I would like to conclude and give you a vision of ISO 19443 in summary. So I think what is important to mention that ISO 19443 is an important step to build a sustainable bridge between the nuclear world and the supplier world. So it permits to connect the aspects related to nuclear safety and to the relevant standards and requirement imposed by the regulator, and needing to be accomplished by the licensee, with modern management system or quality management system, which are represented by ISO 9001. So it's this norm, the ISO 19443 norm, acknowledges the nuclear industry as an international industry which faces many challenges due to the fact that in this framework we need to assure consistent high quality in the supply chain, and this norm was introduced in order to with the aim to contribute overcoming the challenges to connect these two worlds, the nuclear world and the supplier world. So as I mentioned, it builds the bridge between the nuclear industry safety demands and modern international quality management systems to ensure consistent high quality and safety. And I think this image, the two worlds shaking hands, represents gives a very clear picture of how the connection between those two contexts can be given via the introduction of ISO 19443 in your organizations. I would like to thank you for your attention, and now I will let Katharina go over to the Q&As. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Luciana, for sharing your expertise. I'm sure many of you have questions about how ISO 19443 applies to your own company, and this is a great chance to ask them. So please send your questions through the Q&A function, and we'll address them together. I see that we already have really many questions, which I'm super happy about. So let's start with the first one. Luciana, how can we get internal auditor or lead auditor training for this standard? Are there online trainings in your company?
Yes, we do have online trainings which can be delivered. There are, I would say, two models of online trainings. One are the so-called open trainings, where a specific training instance of 2 days, for example, is given to a broader public and not company or industry specific. And for these trainings, I let Katharina explain how these campaigns are fulfilled through LinkedIn and how the application can be delivered. But there's definitely the chance for you to take part of an open training. And then we also offer online trainings which are company specific, meaning that if you think that it's efficient in your case, in a specific case, because you have 15, 20 or more employees of your company who want to take part of a training, then one could think about putting into place a company specific training.
Perfect, thank you. So if you're interested in attending a training, just feel free to drop us a message also in the Q&A panel. We'll find it and we can get back to you via email after the webinar. But as Luciana said, we also do provide company-specific trainings and open trainings where we have regular dates that we then announce through LinkedIn and through other campaigns. So feel free to reach out. We're glad that you're interested. Okay, the next question. If a company is not yet certified according to ISO 19443, cannot deliver products or services related to nuclear safety only? I think the question is, can it deliver products or services related to nuclear safety if it's not certified?
The answer would be yes, because there is no firm requirement for companies being certified ISO 19443 in order to deliver product and services, ITNS product and services. But there are some companies, for example, EDF, who are demanding from their contractors and suppliers to be certified in order to enter their supply chain. So it's not a hard requirement, but it can be demanded by major operators and also by contractors and suppliers. Therefore, it's important to evaluate which your interlocutors and contractors and suppliers are.
Excellent. Thank you very much. The next question is performing service or items for the nuclear industry necessary for receiving and maintaining ISO 19443 certification? In other words, can a company that does not perform work for the nuclear business hold a valid certificate?
And here the answer would be yes and no. So if a company is not delivering ITNS product and services, it can be certified. So there is the possibility to go through the certification audit, but the last instance where this company needs to provide proof that it's actually delivering product and services which are ITNS is in the second year in the framework of the surveillance audit. So you can be certified, but at some point in the framework of the certification cycle, you need to prove that you are actually dedicating at least part of your activities and products to the nuclear industry. And it's also important to mention that if you're not acting in the nuclear industry and producing and delivering ITNS product and services, it doesn't actually make really sense for you to get certified. I mean, even if the certification would be retired in the second year, it doesn't even make sense for you to do this step, because if you're not working in the nuclear industry with ITNS product and services, the ISO 9001 certificate and certification cycle actually covers all your needs in terms of quality management system. So it's not an add-on for everybody to have the ISO 19443 certification, because it really makes sense in some very specific cases, meaning for those companies performing ITNS or delivering ITNS product and services.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Before we move on to the next questions, I would just like to draw your attention to an event we are organizing together with one of our subsidiaries, TÜV SÜD Polska in Poland. It's in October, on the 28th of October. It's called New Power Days. It's a one-day conference that deals mostly with ISO 19443 and ASME and QA1. It is both in English and Polish. There will be a simultaneous interpretation provided, so feel free to come to Warsaw even though you don't speak Polish. And if you're interested in attending this event, just scan the QR code, or again, just drop us a message in the Q&A panel, and we'll be more than happy to give you more information about this exciting event. This is already the second year. Last year was a big success, and we're really looking forward to welcoming attendees this year again. So that was our New Power Days. And now going back to the questions, because I see we still have some. So there's another question coming. For the company with less than 6 employees, is it valid? I think this responds to your slide with a table, Luciana. I think it was
yes.
And it says 6 to 10. So how is it with companies that have less than 6 employees?
Well, in this case, the first line of this table is stating 1 to 5 employees would apply. There's also the distinction made in the table between companies performing design and development or not performing design and development, which has a little bit of influence in the audit duration. But yeah, as mentioned, for the specific example, less than 6 employees, the first line of the table would apply.
Excellent, thank you. We have one a bit longer question, so I hope that I will read it correctly. What is the common business practice for organizations certified to ISO 19443 regarding the graded approach? Is it preferable to establish one dedicated procedure for the graded approach and then refer to it in all applicable processes, describing how to apply the approach in each of them, or rather to implement the graded approach directly within the processes where it is practicable?
That is indeed a little bit
more complicated.
A little bit more complex, and I have to confess, I don't know exactly how it is. I don't have a practical example in mind, which can, in order to answer to the question that it's done in one or the other way. I think for this question, Katharina, it might be advisable to have an exchange with our lead auditor with practical experience on the field and dealing with this concept of graded approach, which is not always evident to understand when not working before in the nuclear industry, and to get back to it with a little bit more of background information.
Perfect. Let's do that. We do have your email address, so we'll get back in touch with you. So we have one more question. If you still have some questions on your mind that you are wanting to ask, just feel free to drop them. We still have some time. So the next question is, why are ISO 19443 audits longer?
So as I mentioned, the ISO 19443 norm is based on ISO 9001. It carries the same requirements than ISO 9001, but is complemented with some specific topics. Graded approach would be one of them. Nuclear safety culture is another aspect which is relevant to the norm. IT&S, products and services as well. So this means that apart from the ISO 9001 requirements, there are some extra requirements needed to be taken into account in the framework of an ISO 19443 audit, which explains a duration which is a little bit longer than the one for the ISO 9001 audits.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Luciana. That was also the last question from the audience, so I would close the Q&A session. Thanks again for joining us. As mentioned earlier, we will be sending you the on-demand version of this webinar after the event has finished, including the Q&A session. Keep your eyes peeled for other webinars about this topic, which you'll find on the Resource Center of our website. Please get in touch to let us know if there are any webinar subjects you would like us to cover. It'd be great to hear exactly what you are interested in hearing about. Feel free to get in touch with us. You see Luciana's email on the screen. And on behalf of myself, Luciana, and everyone at TÜV SÜD, thank you for taking time today to join our webinar, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.